From tonight on, there's no more debate about a presidential regime. There's no more question of dictatorship.
Welcome back. What do the latest election results mean for Turkey? I'm joined in the studio by Kani Holam. He is the director of the American Kurdish Information Network. From Ankara, journalist Tülin Dalolu, and from London, Hakan Camuz. He's chairman of the UK branch of the Turkish Independent Industrialists and Businessmen's Association. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Let's start in Ankara with Tülin. Tülin, give us a sense of how big a setback this election has been for the AK party.
Well, it certainly is a setback, and maybe not for the ruling Justice and Development Party, but definitely for the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He violated the constitution, his constitutional obligations in, keeping his distance to all the political parties running for the election, and directly rallied for his former, party, the AKP, and asked people to give the AKP in the least 400 deputies so that he could change the constitution and then change the country's parliamentary system into a presidential one. But the outcome is actually the opposite. Erdogan lost the national will, and instead of, getting the 400 deputies, the AKP actually lost in the least 69 seats compared to the 2011 elections, and now runs up at 258 deputies. That is short of forming a single-party government, and in order to form that single-party government, any party needs in the least 276 deputies. And so AKP received its first setback, but it's not a defeat, it's not a victory. Still, they are the first runner in the election, but there's definitely a real setback there.
Right, so Hakan, was this a referendum on President Erdogan? And what did you make of the outcome of the election?
Not at all. Sure, not at all. And look, Tülin will make a comment because Tülin would probably have a stance that's completely opposite Mr. President, and she's been writing about him with the fierce hate, and she will make a comment like that. But this wasn't about Recep Tayyip Erdogan. AK Party has been in 11 elections, and all of them AK Party came as first party. The numbers of voters have gone down on this one because there's several reasons that I think we should talk about and focus on this rather than trying to focus on Recep Tayyip Erdogan and make this election about him. It isn't. And there is, of course, the willingness from AK Party and its former leader, current president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to change the constitution because Turkey needs a new constitution. That's what this whole political struggle was all about. But the voters did not want to give that mandate to AK Party on this occasion. They rather tried to focus on some of the complacency AK Party has been maybe suffering from. So the electoral law actually wanted to show AK Party its place rather than trying to see this as a defeat, because it's still the #1 party, 41%, it's only 8 points down from the last election.
Right.
And even people like Tülin can need to understand and accept, and the opposition parties, that this was just a reactionary vote. And if I may just make one more point about this, it's AK Party who's been driving the whole peace process with the Kurdish minority in Turkey and the terror that Turkey has been suffering for the last 35 years or so.
Okay.
And this is AK Party's victory that the Kurdish party like HDP has now taken into the political process.
Let me give Tülin a chance to respond to what you've been saying.
Now, thank you so much. Each time I join the CCTV, I'm always accused of hating Erdogan or the AKP. But I think we really need to make this statement. The reason why the AKP lost today is probably because of that hateful rhetoric that they do have. So in order
but you need to correct
really
what you're saying,
put this election into context, it is not about me, but I am, with all due respect, just, making the point on the elections. The result is the people did not give Erdogan what he wanted. And what I said is, this is not a defeat or victory for the ruling Justice and Development Party, because they pulled still as the first runner in this election. But they still, although they are not defeated or the victorious in this election, they are not able to form a single party government. Therefore, the people definitely gives a message to Mr. Erdogan and the AKP, and there is a setback. This isn't about me again. Please, let's try to keep this professional rather than personalizing it. Please do so.
It's not personal.
Thanks. Okay, Hakan, one moment. I want to bring in Kani. This was clearly a victory for the Kurdish parties in this election. They've now reached that threshold. They've gone over 10%. They will now have representation in parliament. How significant is this?
It's very significant. I mean, the Kurds were divided or have been forced to be divided, if you will, whether they should wage a struggle for their rights in the mountains with AK-47s or in the parliament with laptops, if you will. And this is a chance for them now to wage this struggle peacefully, democratically, with, vigils, hunger strikes, if need be, for more rights. In Turkey, we have a country that is primarily a country of Turks. So the Kurds have no representation, have had no representation. The constitution that the guests are talking about is very skewed. Article 66 denies the very existence of the Kurds. Erdogan wanted to change the constitution, correct? But he was not talking about, granting equal rights to the Kurds. He was talking more about executive power and, having absolute rule, a presidential style government in the way we have it in America. And the voters told him no, and that's good news for Turkey. Turkey doesn't need dictators or absolute rulers. Turkey needs respect for law, institutions, and I think this is a right direction, a right step in that direction.
Hakan,
then I get blamed for saying, and then, you know what is, this is when I really feel for these people, because when I say haters, this is what I mean. Kurdish people have got more rights in the last 13 years with AK Party than ever. You cannot deny this. So when you speak with justice. And the second point is, the constitutional rights that applies to every citizen of Turkey, whether they are Kurd or a Turk or Armenian or any other ethnic minority for that matter.
You went to school in Turkey. You went to school in Turkey.
And you're an academic.
Listen. You went to school in Turkey and learned Turkish. I went to school in Turkey. I had to learn Turkish. I wanted to learn Kurdish. I wanted to, sing in Kurdish. I wasn't given that choice.
You're talking about the old times. You're not talking about last 13, 14 years. How much development has been achieved? How much freedom has been granted to everybody in Turkey? Do not deny what is rightly has been implemented in Turkey. At least say it. Don't be just trying to give a negative image of what's been happening in Turkey. I am originally from Gaziantep, and I do have a Kurdish roots. I am not some assimilated,
you cannot say you're a Kurd in Turkey.
One-sided person. I know exactly what's been done in Turkey.
All right,
At least give the rights to these people who actually achieved so much.
Okay, Hakan, I want to move on. Tulin, the political process, continues despite what happened. The AKP will now begin negotiations to form some kind of coalition government. I want to read to you something that was in the New York Times on Monday morning. The New York Times says, the prospect of a coalition government evokes dark memories of political instability and economic malaise that we saw during the 1990s. What does that mean? Could we see that again, that Turkey will enter a period of instability, political instability?
Everything is possible. I wouldn't, draw any conclusive judgment as to what comes next, but this is really, message that the people gave to the ruling party, that they want more conciliatory approach to resolving the issues of this country. And so what we have in the hand is that definitely the result forces a coalition government. The AKP can do that, but the options are really very limited. Or the opposition parties can do that. There are a lot of speculations in the Ankara Beltway, as you can imagine, but nothing is sealed yet. And we do hear, I've been, listening to some speculations about a potential AKP-MHP, the opposition Nationalist Movement Party coalition. But its leader, Devlet Bahçeli, appeared before the cameras last night after the election, saying that it's not possible for his party to do any coalition. Yet again, I mean, the speculations are really wide in this town today. And they're saying that he did so because he's trying to increase or give more importance to his hands so that he can get more ministries in a potential coalition government. So we really have to wait and see. But this outcome is not about, writing a dark page for the country. It was an AKP propaganda to suggest that it's only the single-party governments that can provide stability for the country. But whatever the people say, the politicians' obligation is to provide the stability and take care of the country's issues.
Hakan, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, there have been no political parties yet that have said that they will join an AKP coalition.
I mean, it's too early to say. I agree with Tülin on that point. Too early to say at the moment, because I'm sure every political party right now having internal discussions about it. Whether there's a political will to join in such a forming a government, we're yet to see, and we hope to see that kind of outcome. One point I will disagree with her is the coalition governments, whether they bring stability or not. Recently, we had an election in United Kingdom, and the coalition government that we had here has gone away, and now you have a single party of conservatism in power. And you can see even in developed democracy like UK, coalition government was hardly working. And in Turkey, we have a bad examples of coalition governments in the past. Tülin will remember, and everybody will remember who's watching this program, that in 2001, we had a 1999 and 2002 period has been the worst time period for Turkey economically, because the country was almost going to be bankrupted because of the coalition government. In the end, in 2002, AK Party came to power, and last 13 years, all you have is stability, growing economy, and all of us, prosperity for all.
All right, Kani, the Kurds have indicated that they will not join a coalition with the AKP. So how do the Kurds hope to exercise their mandate? They've received a mandate now from part of the country in parliament.
Erdogan has been very shrill, holding Quran in his hand and accusing the Kurds of being unbelievers, and having gay candidates on their list and things like that, which has left a very bad taste in the mouth of the Kurdish representatives that got elected. These deputies reflect the reality of Turkey. I mean, there are gays in Turkey, there are people of different faith in Turkey, and HDP campaigned on that, inclusive representation, and they got the 80 or so deputies in the parliament. The reality is they cannot alone do things. They need to work with the others.
So they will have to enter into some kind of coalition, and will it, effectively, will they be the kingmakers right now?
The MHP and they are the kingmakers, if you will. It doesn't look like Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu will have a coalition. Historically, they have been, the left and the right, the liberal and the conservative. Right. The good thing right now is that Erdogan didn't get his desire to change the constitution and be, the sultan that he wanted to be.
Okay, he may not have been given that chance to change the constitution, but Tülin, he will remain a dominant figure in Turkish politics. But given, as you've pointed out, that there has been some extremist language that's been used in the campaign, will he now have to tone down, perhaps temper his political rhetoric and indeed his political program?
Well, I think the people said that they really need the president and the senior officials of the ruling Justice and Development Party to really tone down that rhetoric, because it's very divisive and it's turning people against each other, just like, creating internal enemies amongst, Turkey's own citizens. And that's not a healthy way building a democracy. So the first reaction of the president today came as a written statement, and that was in direct contrast to his approach prior to the election, because he rallied in the election campaigns, violating his constitutional responsibilities in keeping equal distance to all political parties, and asked, votes for AKP. Yet this time around, he said, I'm paraphrasing now, that he respects the decision of the people, and that he hopes that all the political parties will assess the result of this election in a healthy and wise way. So he immediately, changed the tone, and there were a lot of people who used the Gezi Park humor on the social media and, commented that the president is now acting like a president, and that is a good thing for the country.
Okay, Hakan, what are the major challenges that this government will face?
I've got to add a point to the quick point to this discussion. HDP, affiliated with the terrorist organization PKK, have threatened people. If you're talking about foul language before the election campaign, literally threatened to kill them. And the CHP supporters and those who actually hate Recep Tayyip Erdogan have this language of somehow thinking the 41% of the country, AK Party supporters, are supposed to be sheeps, and they don't have their own will. And they have this belittling language that they use before the election. Nobody has changed that language. Nobody criticized that language. They keep talking about Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Not fair.
Okay.
What's happening right now is you have 4 political parties in the election, in parliament. Good for Turkish democracy. They all come through a transparent election. Everybody agrees how fair and transparent the election was. Let's see how the political process now takes shape, and we will all be witnessing to the history being made in Turkey as a developing democratic country.
All right, Kani, the Kurdish parties have done well. The landscape has changed in Turkey. Are we seeing the beginning of a new political era?
Well, I want to make a point about this accusation that HDP was, under the influence of the PKK.
Of course it was. They were getting orders from the mountains.
You spoke. Let me speak too, please.
Yeah, give him a chance to respond. Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to equate PKK with the armed Kurdish group that has an influence on HDP, for 80 years, for 90 years, Turkish armed forces had influence on the Turkish parties. So you have that too on the other side. What is better is that
apples and pears,
hold on, please. What he didn't mention is 128 Kurdish parties or Kurdish HDP offices were attacked. 4 people were killed in Diyarbakir 2 days before the election, 1 day before the election. So all the pressure was on the HDP. All this intolerance of the Kurds, intolerance of their desire to be in the parliament. Any Democrat, any friend of Turkey, any friend of Turks, any friend of Kurds would celebrate this occasion, would say, finally, we have people in the parliament willing to talk, willing to negotiate, willing to engage in dialogue. And that is good. I mean, if you're a friend of Turkey, this is the best thing that has happened in Turkey. But in the long run, we have major obstacles. We have intolerance of the Kurds that still, by law, you cannot change people's mentality. And that has to change, and that will take time.
Well, certainly Turkey has a lot of challenges ahead. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's all we have time for, but the conversation continues. You can always chat with us on Twitter at cctv_America, or send us your comments to The Heat at cctv-america.com. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.